Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be diving into something that, might not sound super exciting at first,
Mhm.
529 plans, but trust me, there's a new development with these that could be a total game changer if you are saving for education and get this
Mm,
retirement too. So,
yeah, that's right. We're going to break down not only, like how 529s work in the first place,
right.
but also this new rule that kind of like suddenly makes them relevant for folks who might not even thought about them before.
Yeah, okay, so it's really quick refresh for anybody who doesn't have these memorized 529 plans.
Okay, so essentially it's an account that's designed to make saving for education more tax efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So you put money in after taxes, but then the growth is tax deferred. And if you use it for qualified education expenses,
Right.
withdrawals are tax free.
So that covers things like tuition, obviously, but also, fees, room and board, even computers in some cases.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a pretty wide range of what qualifies. The specifics can vary a little bit by state, which is something important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
But I think historically the big catch was that if you didn't use the money for qualified education expenses, then you got hit with a penalty on top of paying taxes on the earnings.
Yeah, that was always the part that made me nervous. Like, what if I put all this money in and then my kid decides to, join the circus or something instead of going to college?
Right. And that fear of overfunding a 529 was definitely like a thing for a lot of people. But
Yeah.
that's precisely where this new rule comes in. It's like they heard our concerns and they're like, all right, we're going to address this head on.
All right, spill the beans. What changed?
Okay, so tucked away in the Secura 2.0 Act, which passed in December 2022, there's this provision that allows you to roll over money from a 529 plan into a Roth IRA without penalty.
Oh, wow.
And this went into effect January 1st, 2024.
So now we're not just talking about college savings, we're talking about potentially retirement savings too. Yeah. That's a pretty big shift.
Yeah, it is. And it makes 529s much more versatile. You can save for your child's education. Knowing that if they don't use all the funds, you have the option to move some of those savings into your own retirement account.
Okay, that's amazing. And are we talking about any Roth IRA or are there specific type?
It has to be a Roth IRA, which is important because that means the withdrawals in retirement would be tax-free.
Okay, so double tax benefit,
Yeah.
tax deferred growth in the 529, and then tax-free withdrawals in retirement. I'm seeing why people are calling this such a big deal.
Yeah.
But before we all rush out to open 529s, I'm guessing there are some rules around this rollover, right? Not just a free-for-all.
Right. There are some guidelines. So first off, the 529 account needs to be at least 15 years old.
Yeah.
And it can't have had more than one beneficiary
Okay.
during that time.
So if I open a 529 for my, newborn today, I can't just immediately start funneling money into my Roth IRA.
Right.
Makes sense. There's going to be some incentive to actually use it for its intended purpose, at least for a little while.
Yeah.
What else?
Yet the funds that you want to roll over have to have been contributed at least 5 years before the rollover.
Okay, so no quick maneuvering there either. What about how much you can actually transfer?
So that's limited to the annual Roth IRA contribution limits, which right now are $7,000. Or if you're over 50, it's $8,000.
Okay, so it's not an unlimited amount. Got it.
Right.
But even with those limits, $7,000 a year, growing tax deferred, and then being withdrawn tax-free in retirement, that adds up. Is there a lifetime limit on how much you can roll over?
Yes, there is. The lifetime limit is $35,000.
Okay, so substantial chunk of change, but not, not like a total loophole. What about income limits? Is there like a certain income level where you're no longer eligible?
So this is where it gets really interesting. There are no income limits
You're kidding.
for this rollover.
That's huge. So even someone like making a really high income who wouldn't normally be able to contribute to a Roth IRA directly
Right.
could potentially use this rollover to get money into a Roth IRA.
Yeah.
Exactly. It essentially opens up a new avenue for high earners to utilize a Roth IRA for retirement savings. It's been referred to as like a backdoor Roth IRA strategy.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to need a deeper dive on that whole backdoor Roth IRA thing, because that sounds like a whole other rabbit hole of financial strategy. But first, let's circle back to some of the more like general 529 features we haven't covered yet, like those contribution limits and state-specific benefits you mentioned earlier.
Good point. Yeah, we've been so focused on this rollover rule that we didn't even touch on that.
So unlike a Roth IRA where there's a hard limit on how much you can contribute each year with 529s, it's more about the total amount you can put in over time, right?
Right. Each state sets its own aggregate contribution limit,
Okay.
and it varies quite a bit. Some states you can put in $250,000, others over $500,000.
Wow. So we're talking like significantly more than you can put into a Roth even over a lifetime.
Exactly. And it's important to know your state-specific rules because you don't want to exceed those limits, right? So Definitely do your research there. And you mentioned some states have like extra perks on top of the federal tax advantages, right?
Absolutely. Many states offer tax deductions or credits for 529 contributions, which can really sweeten the deal.
So you're getting the federal tax benefits plus potentially some state level savings too. Not bad. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The basics of 529 plans, the ins and outs of this new Roth IRA rollover rule contribution limits those state benefits.
It's a lot to take in. I know. But I think the key takeaway here is that 529 plans are suddenly a much more powerful and flexible tool. They can potentially serve both education and retirement goals.
Exactly. And it raises some like really interesting questions about how this might change the way people approach like financial planning as a whole.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly what I wanted to get into next. This
Yeah.
isn't just about like the mechanics of these accounts. It's about a potential shift in how we think about saving and investing for the future.
Okay, now you've really piqued my curiosity.
Wow.
So, for everyone listening, stay with us because we're going to explore those like bigger implications of this 529 rule change right after a quick break.
What's fascinating here is how this change really like reframes the way we think about 529 plans.
Yeah.
They're no longer just about funding a specific educational goal. Now they can be part of a more holistic, like long-term financial strategy.
Yeah, it's like suddenly these plans have become multi-purpose, which is a big deal, especially for people who, might have been hesitant to fully utilize them before.
Exactly. Think about a family where the parents are already maxing out their retirement contributions, but still want to save aggressively for their child's education.
Right.
In the past, overfunding that 529 might have felt risky, but now knowing there's this rollover option,
Right.
it opens up a whole new level of strategic planning.
That makes total sense. You're not just stuck with like, a pot of money that you can only use for one thing.
Right.
It adds a layer of flexibility that just wasn't there before.
Right. And it can be especially appealing to people who are unsure about their child's future educational path.
Yeah.
Let's say your child is young and you're not sure if they'll even go to college.
Yeah.
Or maybe they'll decide to go to a trade school, which might be less expensive.
Right.
Now you can save more aggressively knowing you have this other option.
So it kind of takes some of the pressure off knowing you have a backup plan. But I'm also thinking about folks who maybe haven't been as diligent about saving for retirement.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, this rollover option almost makes a 529 plan like a stealth retirement account, right?
In a way, yes, it's certainly not a replacement for traditional retirement accounts.
Huh.
But it does offer another avenue for building tax-advantaged savings.
Right.
And when you factor in the potential for state tax benefits on those contributions,
Yeah.
it becomes even more compelling.
Okay, so let's say someone's listening to this and thinking, all right, I need to like jump on this 529 train, max out my contributions. What would you tell them?
First and foremost, I would remind them that while this rollover option is fantastic, the primary purpose of a 529 is still to fund education.
Of course, yeah.
So it's crucial to strike a balance, figure out what your realistic education savings goals are, and then consider how much you might want to contribute beyond that with the potential for a rollover later on.
Right, because even with those high aggregate limits, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're sacrificing other important financial goals just to max out a 529.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right balance for your individual circumstances and long-term goals.
And this is where like a good financial advisor can be really helpful, right?
Absolutely.
Someone who can look at the big picture and help you figure out how to make all the pieces fit together.
This kind of planning can get complex, especially when you're factoring in different tax implications and potential future scenarios.
Okay, so before we get too deep into the weeds of financial planning, I want to come back to something you mentioned earlier, the backdoor Roth IRA strategy. For those of us who aren't familiar with that term, can you break down what that means and how it relates to this 529 rollover?
Of course. So a backdoor Roth IRA is basically a workaround for people whose income is too high to contribute directly to a Roth IRA.
Because Roth IRAs have those income limits, right?
Exactly. Above a certain income, you're not eligible to contribute.
Right,
But there's no income limit for contributing to a traditional IRA.
right.
So with a backdoor Roth strategy, you contribute to a traditional IRA and then convert those funds into a Roth IRA.
I see. So this new 529 rollover essentially creates another way to do that conversion. But instead of going from a traditional IRA to a Roth, you're going from a 529 to a Roth.
Precisely. And it's especially beneficial for high earners because they can bypass those Roth IRA income limits by using this rollover strategy.
Okay, so now I'm seeing how all these pieces fit together, this 529 rollover rule, has opened up some really interesting possibilities, especially for people who are already maxing out their other retirement savings options or who wouldn't be eligible for a Roth IRA directly. It adds like a whole new layer of strategy to financial planning.
And that's what makes it so compelling.
Yeah,
It's not just about one specific account or strategy.
right.
It's about understanding how all these different tools can work together to help you achieve your overall financial goals.
Yeah, what's striking me is how much this rule change could potentially shift the way families talk about saving and investing.
Hmm.
We're so used to thinking about college savings as separate from retirement savings.
Right.
But now those lines are starting to blur.
That's a really insightful observation, and I think you're right. It could lead to some important conversations within families. Maybe parents who hadn't considered saving for their own retirement might be more motivated to do so now, knowing that it could indirectly benefit their children as well.
Or imagine a scenario where a child receives a scholarship or decides not to pursue higher education.
Yeah.
Instead of those 529 funds just sitting there unused, they can be rolled over to help the parents boost their retirement savings.
Yeah, it's a win-win for everyone involved.
Exactly. And it reinforces the importance of having a flexible financial plan.
Sure.
Life is full of surprises, and your financial plan should be able to adapt to those changes. This 529 rollover option certainly adds a new dimension to that ongoing process.
I completely agree, and it highlights the value of seeking professional financial advice. Someone who's knowledgeable about all these nuances can help you navigate the complexities and develop a strategy that truly aligns with your individual needs and goals.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about how this 529 rollover rule works, the potential benefits and drawbacks, and even how it relates to other financial planning strategies like the backdoor Roth IRA. But I think what's most exciting is the potential ripple effect this could have on the way we think about saving and investing for the future.
And that's ultimately what we hope to accomplish with these deep dives. It's not just about giving you the information.
Right.
It's about inspiring you to think differently and approach your finances with a fresh perspective.
Well said. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode. But before we do, we have some amazing resources for you to check out in the show notes. You'll find links to articles, calculators, and even a directory of state-specific 529 plan information.
It's a wealth of information to help you delve even deeper into this topic and make informed decisions for your financial future.
Exactly. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, we'd love for you to share it with your friends, family, anyone who might be thinking about saving for education or retirement. The more informed we all are, the better equipped we'll be to make smart financial choices.
Absolutely. Spreading financial literacy is a mission we're incredibly passionate about.
So before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder. We've talked about how this new rule blurs the lines between education savings and retirement savings. But how else might this shift impact the way we approach financial planning as a whole? How might it influence the conversations we have with our children about money in the future?
Those are great questions, and I encourage everyone to take some time to reflect on it because in the end, it's not just about the money, it's about creating a secure and fulfilling financial future for ourselves and our loved ones.
Well said, and on that note, we'll leave you to contemplate those big questions. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the exciting world of 529 plans. Until next time, happy saving.
Yeah, it really is fascinating to think about, how just this one little rule change
Right.
can have such a big impact on the way that we approach financial planning. And I love that you brought up those questions
Yeah.
about like how this might change conversations that families have about money and the future.
It's so important, right? Like these financial topics can feel a little bit taboo or whatever.
Yeah. But I think when we start thinking about them holistically, it opens up more opportunities to have like open and honest conversations with our kids about planning, saving, and investing for themselves.
Exactly. It's not just about handing them a 529 account when they're 18 and saying good luck.
Right.
It's about involving them in the process. Explaining the different options and kind of empowering them to make good decisions about their financial futures.
And I think this 529 rollover rule actually provides a perfect opportunity to do just that.
Yeah.
You can talk to your kids about how their college savings could potentially benefit the whole family, even their own future retirement. It's a way to demonstrate that financial planning is a team effort and that everybody can play a role.
I love that it takes the focus off of just, that one immediate goal of paying for college.
Right.
And it expands it to, a broader vision of long-term financial well-being for everybody. It's about building a legacy